The massive alien ships drifted silently through the dark void of space, their hulls scarred and blackened from what had clearly been a desperate escape. 12 enormous vessels, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built, hung motionless in the emptiness between stars. Inside these dying ships, 50,000 alien souls faced their final hours. Admiral Kethvara stood on the bridge of the flagship, her 6 arms trembling as she watched the life support readings plummet toward 0. The Zephyrians had fled their homeworld just in time, escaping before their sun finally collapsed into a white dwarf. But their ancient quantum drives, pushed beyond all limits during the frantic evacuation, had finally given out completely. The engineering teams had tried everything. They'd rerouted power from non-essential systems, cannibalizing parts from smaller ships to keep the main vessels running. Nothing worked. The quantum cores were completely burned out, and without them, the ships were nothing more than giant metal coffins drifting through space. Air recyclers wheezed and stuttered throughout the fleet. Water purification systems had failed on 3 ships already. The youngest children were getting sick first, their small bodies unable to handle the increasingly toxic atmosphere. Parents held them close, whispering ancient Zephyrian prayers. That seemed hollow in the face of such technological failure. Kethvara knew she had no choice left. Broadcasting a distress signal in this remote corner of the galaxy was almost pointless. They were far from any major trade routes, far from any civilized worlds. The nearest Galactic Council outpost was months away, even if someone bothered to respond to the call of refugees that most species considered worthless. Still, she had to try. 50,000 lives depended on it. The distress beacon went out into the void, carrying with it the desperate plea of a dying fleet. It transmitted their coordinates, their situation, and a simple message that any spacefaring species would understand. They were stranded. They were dying. They needed help. Light years away on a small blue planet that most galactic civilizations barely acknowledged, the signal arrived at humanity's deep space monitoring station. Earth was still young in the cosmic community, having only achieved faster-than-light travel a few decades earlier. Most alien species saw humans as primitive newcomers, barely worth noticing. The night shift operator at the monitoring station almost missed it. The signal was weak, garbled by distance and interference, but there was something about it that made him lean forward, adjusting the receivers and cleaning up the transmission. As the message became clearer, his eyes widened. This wasn't just any distress call. This was a massive fleet in serious trouble. 50,000 beings were about to die unless someone helped them. The operator's hands shook as he reached for the emergency communication system that would alert Earth's space. Command. What happened next would change everything. Not just for the dying Zephyrian fleet, but for humanity's place in the galaxy. The small, supposedly insignificant human race was about to do something that would shock the entire galactic community. Something that would prove that sometimes the newest voices in the cosmos have the most important things to say. The emergency session of Earth's United Space Council had been going on for 6 straight hours, and tempers were running hot. Representatives from every major nation sat around the circular table, their faces grim as they stared at the impossible numbers on their screens. 50,000 aliens, 12 massive ships, all of them dying in the cold depths of space, waiting for a rescue that seemed utterly beyond human capability. "We're talking about mobilizing our entire space fleet," the European representative said, rubbing his tired eyes. "Every cargo ship, every passenger liner, every military vessel we have, and even then we might not have enough capacity." The numbers were staggering. Humanity had been in space for less than 50 years. Their entire merchant fleet consisted of maybe 200 ships, most of them designed for hauling cargo between Earth and the lunar colonies. The largest passenger vessel could barely hold 1,000 people in emergency conditions. "The fuel costs alone would bankrupt half our space programs," added the African Union delegate. "We're talking about a round trip that would take months. Our ships weren't designed for long-range rescue operations." Captain Rivera, one of Earth's most experienced deep space pilots, stood up slowly. She'd been quiet throughout most of the debate, but now all eyes turned to her weathered face. She'd spent more time in the void than almost any other human alive, and her opinion carried weight. "I've been running the calculations," she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was proposing. "It's impossible with our current setup. But what if we strip everything non-essential from our cargo haulers, rip out the freight handling systems, the crew quarters, everything except life support and engines?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew what she was suggesting. "We turn every cargo ship into a passenger transport," Rivera continued. "Cram people in like sardines if we have to. It won't be comfortable, but it'll keep them alive, and we don't. Just use military and commercial vessels. We mobilize everything. Private yachts, research ships, even the orbital construction platforms, if we can jury-rig engines to them." The financial minister from Asia looked horrified. "The cost would be astronomical. We'd have to rebuild our entire merchant fleet afterward. And what if we fail? What if we get out there and can't save them all?" "Then we save who we can," Rivera shot back. "When did we become the kind of species that runs numbers on whether other people deserve to live?" The debate raged for another 2 hours. Some argued that humanity couldn't afford such an operation. Others pointed out that they barely knew anything about these aliens. What if it was a trap? What if the rescued aliens brought diseases or hostile intentions? But something had shifted in the room when Rivera spoke. The arguments against the mission began to sound hollow, selfish even. Here was a chance for humanity to prove something important, not just to the galaxy, but to themselves. The final vote wasn't even close. Despite the enormous cost, despite the logistical nightmare, despite the very real possibility of failure, humanity chose to try. Every available ship would be mobilized. Every resource would be stretched to its limit. Earth was about to attempt the largest rescue operation in human history, for people they'd never met, expecting nothing in return. The human rescue fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a spectacular display of coordinated precision. 137 ships of every size and description materialized in formation around the dying Zephyrian vessels. Cargo haulers gutted and converted for passenger transport, luxury yachts pressed into emergency service, even converted mining ships with their hulls reinforced for the journey. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour, staring at the alien fleet through the viewport. The Zephyrian ships were enormous, dwarfing even humanity's largest vessels, but they were clearly in trouble. Debris floated around several hulls, and the energy readings showed power systems operating at dangerously low levels. "Communications, try to establish contact," Rodriguez ordered. "Use the universal mathematical sequences first, then move to basic pictographs." The first attempts at communication were frustrating. The Zephyrian language was completely unlike anything in human databases. Complex harmonics and frequency modulations that human vocal cords couldn't reproduce. But slowly, using simple mathematics and basic concepts, both sides began to understand each other. Admiral Kethvara watched the human ships with growing confusion. In her 3 centuries of military service, she'd seen countless first contact scenarios. There was always a pattern. The stronger species would approach cautiously, assess the situation, then begin negotiations. Terms would be discussed. Payment arrangements would be made. Guarantees would be demanded. But these humans were doing something unprecedented. Before any formal agreements were reached, before any terms were negotiated, the human ships were already moving into position and beginning supply transfers. Admiral, her communications officer, reported, "The humans are requesting permission to dock with our ships. They're saying they have medical supplies and emergency life support systems." Kethvara's 6 arms gestured in bewilderment. "Did they mention payment? Terms of service? What do they want in return?" "Nothing, Admiral. They just keep asking about our immediate needs." The first human shuttle to dock was piloted by Dr. Martinez, a veteran of Earth's space rescue service. She came aboard carrying emergency medical supplies and portable atmosphere processors. Through the crude translation system they'd jury-rigged, she immediately began asking about the sick and injured. "Your children," she said, the words coming out as electronic beeps and tones through the translator. "We have medicine, clean air machines, food that won't hurt your stomachs." Kethvara followed the human doctor through the ship's corridors, watching in amazement as Martinez worked. The human didn't hesitate to touch alien technology she'd never seen before. She didn't ask for instruction manuals or safety protocols. She just started helping. Within hours, human crews were swarming through the Zephyrian fleet. Engineers worked, side by side with alien technicians, sharing tools and techniques despite the language barrier. Medical teams set up emergency treatment centers in cargo bays. Supply shuttles ran constant trips between the human and alien vessels. The most shocking part wasn't the efficiency of the operation, it was the attitude. Every human who came aboard greeted the Zephyrians with what could only be described as genuine warmth. They smiled, they gestured in what seemed to be friendly ways, and they worked with an enthusiasm that Kethvara had never seen in any rescue operation. "I don't understand," she confided to her first officer. "What's their angle? What do they gain from this?" Her first officer, equally puzzled, could only shake his head. "Perhaps they're simply what they appear to be, Admiral. Perhaps they're just trying to help." The concept was so foreign to galactic politics that Kethvara struggled to accept it. But as she watched human children sending hand-drawn pictures through the communication system to Zephyrian families, she began to wonder if these strange beings might actually be exactly what they seemed. By the third day of the rescue operation, Admiral Kethvara thought she had seen everything. Then the humans started bringing over what they called comfort supplies, and her understanding of galactic civilization turned completely upside down. The first shock came when Engineer Thompson arrived with a team carrying not just repair equipment, but portable entertainment units. Real holographic projection systems, music players, even simple games. He set up a small recreation area in one of the Zephyrian cargo bays and watched as alien children gathered around in wonder. "Entertainment?" Kethvara asked through the improving translation system. "But we have not paid for this. These are luxury items." Thompson looked genuinely confused by the question. "They're kids," he said simply. "They've been cooped up in dying ships for weeks. They need something to take their minds off the fear." Within hours, human volunteers were teaching Zephyrian children simple Earth games. The language barrier didn't matter when it came to laughter. Young humans and young Zephyrians found ways to play together that transcended words. They shared art supplies, electronic toys, even candy that had been carefully tested to make sure it wouldn't harm alien digestive systems. But it wasn't just the children who received unexpected kindness. Dr. Patel arrived with specialized medical equipment designed for elderly care. She'd studied the limited biological data transmitted earlier and realized that many older Zephyrians were suffering from conditions that human medicine could easily treat. "Your elderly are in pain," she explained to the Zephyrian medical staff. "This equipment can help. Joint support systems, neural stimulators for memory enhancement, even artificial organs if needed." The Zephyrian doctors stared at the advanced medical devices in disbelief. This equipment was worth more than some planets' entire medical budgets, and the humans were just giving it away. Even more impressive were the human engineers working deep in the bowels of the alien ships. Chief Engineer Williams had been working for 36 hours straight, covered in strange alien coolant fluid, trying to repair quantum drive components that no human had ever seen before. "The safety protocols say I should be wearing full hazmat gear," he told his worried crew. "But if I can't feel the vibrations in the quantum matrix directly, I can't tune it properly. These people need their engines working." His hands were stained, blue from alien lubricants, and he'd been exposed to radiation levels that would normally require immediate medical attention. But he kept working, jury-rigging human components to interface with alien technology, creating hybrid systems that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. The most shocking moment came when Captain Johnson arrived with what he called morale supplies. Luxury items that served no survival purpose whatsoever. Premium coffee and tea, comfortable pillows, even small decorative plants in portable grow pods. "I know it seems silly," Johnson explained to a bewildered Zephyrian officer, "but when you're stuck in space for months, little comforts make all the difference. These plants produce oxygen too, but mainly they're just nice to look at." Admiral Kethvara found herself walking through her ship in a daze. Everywhere she looked, humans were working alongside her people, sharing not just necessities, but genuine care. They brought books translated into basic pictographs, musical instruments for cultural exchange, even personal photographs of Earth to share with curious aliens. In all my years of military service, she confided to her first officer, I have never seen anything like this. They're not just saving our lives, they're trying to preserve our dignity, our happiness, our hope. This wasn't standard galactic rescue protocol. This was something entirely new in the universe. What started as an emergency rescue operation slowly transformed into something beautiful and unexpected. As the weeks passed, the barrier between human and Zephyrian crews began to dissolve, replaced by genuine friendship and understanding that surprised everyone involved. 8-year-old Tommy, from the human ship Aurora, became the unofficial ambassador between species. He spent hours drawing pictures with colorful crayons, showing them through the viewing ports to Zephyrian children on the other side. His drawings were simple but universal, stick figures holding hands, bright suns, happy faces, and rocket ships flying together through space. The Zephyrian children responded with their own art, using a crystalline substance that hardened into beautiful translucent sculptures. They created tiny figures that seemed to dance in the light. When Tommy received his first alien sculpture, a small figure that looked remarkably like a human child reaching toward the stars, he cried with joy. Soon, artwork was flowing back and forth between the ships. Human teenagers shared digital music, carefully adjusted so the frequencies wouldn't hurt Zephyrian hearing. The aliens responded with their own haunting melodies, created by rubbing their 6-fingered hands against specially tuned metal plates. The songs were completely different from human music, yet somehow they conveyed the same emotions of hope and gratitude. Dr. Kim, a xenobiologist who had volunteered for the mission, found herself working closely with the Zephyrian healers. At first, the collaboration was awkward. The aliens used bioelectric fields to diagnose injuries, while humans relied on scanners and sensors. But gradually they began learning from each other. Your people's healing songs, Dr. Kim explained through the translator to Master Healer Vorthan, they actually create measurable changes in brain chemistry. The frequencies promote healing at a cellular level. Vorthan's 6 arms moved in. What Kim had learned was a gesture of amazement. And your mechanical devices see inside bodies without cutting. This is like magic to us. Together, they developed new treatment methods that combined human technology with Zephyrian bioenergy techniques. Injured refugees who had been suffering for weeks suddenly found relief through these hybrid healing approaches. The most touching exchanges happened during the quiet hours when both crews had finished their daily work. Families from both species would gather near the viewing ports that connected their ships. Despite not speaking the same language, parents would share stories about their children. The Zephyrians learned about human schools and birthday parties, while humans heard about the great crystal cities of the Zephyrian homeworld and their tradition of giving children star names based on the constellations visible on the night they were born. Lieutenant Commander Jackson found himself spending hours with Admiral Kethvara, sharing stories about their respective military careers. Through broken translations and hand gestures, they discovered that both species valued honor, duty, and protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Your people, Kethvara said one evening, her words coming through the translator with unusual warmth. You risk everything for strangers. In my long life, I have never seen such behavior. Jackson shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. It's just what you do, isn't it? When someone needs help, you help them. Doesn't matter what planet they're from. The concept seemed to shake the alien admiral to her core. She had spent centuries in a galaxy where every action had a price, where kindness was weakness, where strength meant taking what you wanted. These humans operated by completely different rules. As the rescue operation entered its 4th week, something profound had changed aboard both fleets. They were no longer just aliens helping each other survive. They had become something new, a community that crossed species lines, bound together by shared experiences and mutual respect. The rescue operation was nearly complete when Admiral Kethvara requested a private meeting with Captain Rodriguez. Her 6 arms moved nervously as she entered the human captain's quarters. A gesture that Rodriguez had learned indicated deep anxiety among the Zephyrians. "There is something I must tell you," Kethvara began, her words heavy with regret. "Something that will change everything you think you know about this galaxy." Rodriguez poured 2 cups of coffee, offering one to the alien admiral who had grown fond of the human beverage. "What's troubling you? The rescue is going perfectly. Your people will be safe soon." Kethvara's large eyes, normally a bright blue, had turned a darker shade that Rodriguez now recognized as sadness. "That is exactly what I fear. Safe from one threat, but exposed to something far worse." The truth came out slowly, painfully. The Zephyrian fleet hadn't just been fleeing their dying sun. They were refugees running from something called the Hegemony, a massive military alliance that controlled most of the galaxy through fear and brutal efficiency. "The Hegemony doesn't see other species as equals," Kethvara explained. "They divide the galaxy into 3 categories: member species who serve them, slave species who work for them, and resources to be harvested. My people refused to join their alliance 50 years ago. Since then, they have been slowly strangling our worlds, making life impossible until we had no choice but to flee." Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. "And humanity? Where do we fit in this system?" The alien admiral's silence was answer enough. Finally, she spoke. "Your planet has been marked for conquest for 20 years. Rich resources, strategic location, and a species that the Hegemony considers primitive enough to be easily controlled. They plan to move against Earth within the next decade." The implications hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. While humanity had been focused on exploration and scientific advancement, they had unknowingly painted a target on their backs. Their kindness, their willingness to help others, their open and trusting nature, all of it made them appear weak to a galaxy that operated on very different principles. "But surely some species resist them," Rodriguez asked desperately. "There must be others who fight back?" Kethvara's gesture was one of bitter regret. "Most species learned long ago that cooperation with the Hegemony means survival. Those who resist are crushed. The galaxy operates on a simple principle: the strong take what they want from the weak. It has been this way for thousands of years." She paused, looking directly at the human captain. "Until now, what your people have done here, this rescue, this generosity, without expectation of payment, it violates every rule of galactic civilization. It makes the Hegemony's philosophy look barbaric by comparison." The weight of understanding settled over Rodriguez. Humanity's greatest strength, their compassion and willingness to help others, was also their greatest vulnerability in a galaxy ruled by predators. "They will see this rescue as a threat," Kethvara continued. "Not just because you helped us escape, but because you have demonstrated that their way is not the only way. Species across the galaxy will hear about what humans did here. Some will begin to question why they submit to the Hegemony's rule." Rodriguez stared out the viewport at the human rescue fleet, suddenly seeing their brave volunteers in a new light. These people had risked everything to save strangers, never knowing that their act of kindness would mark them as enemies of the most powerful force in the galaxy. "How long do we have?" Rodriguez asked quietly. "Not long," Kethvara replied, her voice heavy with guilt. "By saving us, you may have doomed yourselves, and that burden will haunt me for the rest of my days." The rescue was almost complete, but suddenly it felt like everything was just beginning. The massive Hegemony warships dropped out of hyperspace without warning, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could obliterate planets. 12 enormous vessels, each one dwarfing even the largest Zephyrian ships, arranged themselves in a perfect attack formation around the rescue fleet. Captain Rodriguez was in the middle of reviewing evacuation schedules when her communications officer's face went pale. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's not friendly." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that looked like it had been designed for warfare. General Vorthak stood nearly 8 feet tall, his armored carapace scarred from countless battles. 4 massive arms ended in clawed hands, and his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "Primitive species," Vorthak's words came through the universal translator with unmistakable contempt. "You are interfering with Hegemony property. The escaped resources will be returned immediately." Rodriguez felt her blood boil at the casual. where he referred to 50,000 living beings as resources. She stood straighter, meeting the alien general's gaze through the screen. These are refugees seeking safety. We won't abandon them to slavery. Vorthak's reaction was not anger, but amusement. His mandibles clicked in what was clearly laughter. Slavery? You misunderstand your position, little human. These creatures belong to the hegemony. They will return to their assigned labor duties. And you will join them. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about the Zephyrians anymore. Your species has been designated for integration into hegemony. Labor forces, Vorthak continued casually, as if discussing the weather. The conquest of your homeworld was scheduled for next year, but your interference here has accelerated our timeline. Consider this a preview of your future. Rodriguez's hands clenched into fists. Around the bridge, her crew exchanged shocked glances. They had come here to save lives, and now they learned that humanity itself was marked for conquest. We've done nothing to threaten you, Rodriguez said, fighting to keep her voice steady. We're just trying to help people who needed rescue. Exactly, Vorthak replied, his tone turning cold. Your actions demonstrate dangerous thinking, helping others without profit, showing kindness to inferior species. These behaviors spread like a disease. The hegemony cannot allow such weakness to infect galactic civilization. The general's image leaned forward, his scarred face filling the screen. You have one standard galactic day to surrender. Turn over the escaped resources and submit your entire fleet for processing. Your people will make excellent laborers once properly conditioned. Rodriguez felt the weight of every human life under her command. Scattered across dozens of ships, thousands of volunteers who had risked everything to help strangers now faced enslavement or death. And if we refuse, she asked, though she already knew the answer. Vorthak's mandibles clicked again in that horrible laugh. Then we will take what we want by force. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our vessels. Your technology is centuries behind ours. This is not a negotiation. It is a courtesy notice. Before we claim our property, the transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Through the viewports, the hegemony warships hung in space like dark omens, their weapon systems powering up with visible energy discharges. Throughout both fleets, word spread quickly. The humans who had come to rescue refugees now faced the same fate they had tried to prevent. The Zephyrians, who had thought themselves free, realized their rescuers were now trapped alongside them. But something unexpected began to happen. Instead of panic, instead of despair, a different emotion began to spread through the combined fleets. It started with the children, both human and Zephyrian, who had been playing together for weeks. Then it spread to the adults who had worked side by side, shared meals, and become friends across species lines. The emotion was determination. They had found something worth fighting for, and they weren't going to give it up without a fight. Admiral Kethavara stood before the emergency council of Zephyrian ship captains, her 6 arms moving in gestures that conveyed absolute determination. Around the holographic conference table, her fellow officers looked stunned by what she was proposing. You're asking us to fight the hegemony, Captain Thelmos said, his voice shaking. They have 12 battleships. We have cargo vessels and passenger transports. This is suicide. Kethavara's eyes blazed with newfound resolve. These humans risked everything to save us. They asked for nothing in return. Now they face enslavement because they showed us kindness. How can we abandon them? The debate was fierce but brief. One by one, the Zephyrian captains made their choice. They would stand with humanity, even if it meant certain death. Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship, Captain Rodriguez was coordinating with her fleet commanders. The situation looked hopeless. Their rescue ships had minimal weaponry, designed for cargo transport and emergency operations, not warfare against the galaxy's most powerful military force. We've got mining charges from the asteroid-harvesting ships, reported Commander Kim. Some plasma cutters that might work as short-range weapons, a few military escorts with actual weapons, but nothing that can penetrate hegemony armor. That's when Chief Engineer Martinez had an idea that changed everything. What if we don't try to fight them ship to ship? What if we use what we learned from each other? The weeks of cultural exchange had created something unprecedented. Human engineers now understood Zephyrian quantum technology, while Zephyrian, Technicians had learned human improvisation techniques. Working together, they began to devise tactics that neither species could have conceived alone. The Zephyrians revealed that their ships, though damaged, still had functioning quantum field generators. The humans showed them how to jury-rig these systems in ways that violated every safety protocol, but created powerful new capabilities. "We link our ships in quantum pairs," explained Dr. Voss, working alongside Zephyrian physicist Kren Tal. "When one ship moves, its paired ship mirrors the movement instantly, regardless of distance. We can create coordinated attacks that will confuse their targeting systems." Human creativity merged with Zephyrian precision. They converted cargo haulers into missile platforms using mining explosives. They turned passenger liners into electronic warfare ships, using Zephyrian bioenergy fields to scramble hegemony. Communications. Most importantly, they discovered that their combined crews worked together with an efficiency that surprised everyone. Human intuition complemented Zephyrian logic. Human willingness to take risks balanced Zephyrian careful planning. When the hegemony attack began, General Vorthak expected quick victory. His battleships moved forward in standard formation, weapons charging for what should have been a simple slaughter. Instead, they encountered something no hegemony commander had ever faced. Enemies who fought not for conquest or resources, but for each other. The human Zephyrian fleet scattered in seemingly random directions, then suddenly converged from multiple angles. Ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting, their crews patching hull breaches with alien materials and human ingenuity. "Impossible," Vorthak snarled as his tactical display showed chaos where there should have been easy victory. "How are they coordinating these attacks?" His officers had no answer. The combined fleet was using quantum-linked maneuvers that appeared to violate the laws of physics. Human ships would vanish behind asteroids only to have their Zephyrian partners emerge from completely different directions, firing weapons that shouldn't exist. Throughout the battle, something beautiful and terrible was happening. Parents from both species worked side by side in engine rooms, keeping their ships running under impossible conditions. Children who had shared drawings now shared the determination to protect their new friends. The hegemony had superior technology and overwhelming firepower, but they were facing something they had never encountered in their centuries of conquest. Two species who had learned to fight as one, powered by hope instead of fear, united by friendship instead of intimidation. The battle was far from over, but already the impossible was happening. The unstoppable hegemony war machine was being stopped by refugees and rescuers who refused to surrender what they had found together. The impossible had happened. When the smoke cleared and the quantum fires died down, 8 of the 12 hegemony battleships were either destroyed or crippled beyond repair. General Vorthak's flagship limped away into hyperspace, carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the hegemony had been defeated in open battle. Captain Rodriguez stood on her bridge, staring at the debris field that told the story of their unlikely victory. Around her, exhausted crew members worked to coordinate rescue operations for survivors from both sides. Even now, after everything the hegemony had threatened, humans were pulling enemy soldiers from damaged ships and giving them medical care. "Captain," her communications officer called out, excitement clear in her voice, "we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Dozens of star systems are requesting copies of our battle recordings." What happened next surprised everyone. The story of the rescue mission and the battle spread faster than anyone could have imagined, not through official channels or military networks, but through the underground communications used by oppressed species throughout the galaxy. On a mining world in the Centauri sector, slave workers gathered around hidden receivers, listening, in amazement to the tale of humans who risked everything for strangers. In the forced labor camps of the Rigel system, alien prisoners whispered about the species that fought the hegemony and won. The story grew with each telling. How humanity had stripped their entire merchant fleet to save 50,000 refugees. How they had shared not just food and medicine, but art and music and friendship. How they had stood against impossible odds rather than abandon those they had rescued. Within months, something unprecedented began to happen across the galaxy. Species that had submitted to hegemony rule for centuries started asking dangerous questions. If these young humans could defeat the hegemony's finest battleships, what else might be possible? The first to break free were the Andromedan mining colonies. They had been sending tribute to the hegemony for 200 years, but after hearing about the human-Zephyrian alliance, they simply stopped. When hegemony enforcers arrived to collect overdue payments, they found empty facilities and a message, "We choose freedom." The rebellion spread like wildfire. The Crystalline Confederacy, the Spiral Arm Cooperative, even the ancient vegan merchant guild began withdrawing from hegemony control. They didn't fight with weapons, they fought with something more powerful. They chose not to participate in a system built on fear and exploitation. Admiral Kethvara found herself at the center of something she had never imagined possible. Representatives from dozens of species were requesting to join what news broadcasts were calling the Freedom Alliance. The Zephyrian admiral, who had spent her life believing that might made right, now helped coordinate a coalition based on completely different principles. "Your people have done something extraordinary," she told Captain Rodriguez during one of their planning sessions. "You have shown the galaxy that there is another way to live." The Human-Zephyrian Alliance became the foundation for something much larger. The coalition of free worlds grew to include over 200 star systems within 5 years. They shared technology freely, helped each other during disasters, and resolved conflicts through negotiation rather than warfare. But perhaps the most important change was cultural. Children across the galaxy grew up hearing stories about the humans who saved strangers and fought for freedom. Art, music, and literature began reflecting new values of cooperation and mutual aid. The hegemony still controlled vast regions of space, but their absolute authority was broken. They had learned that their philosophy of domination through fear had a fatal weakness. It could not survive contact with genuine compassion. What had started as a simple rescue mission had become something much more powerful. Humanity's greatest strength, their ability to care for others without expecting anything in return, had proven to be the galaxy's most revolutionary force. The universe would never be the same.